2021 at 9:30 in the morning. This inquiry resumes.
Before we commence with the cross-examination of Mr. Brain, just a couple of housekeeping matters. Because of prior bookings in the rooms that adjoin our room here, and we're anticipating there will be a disruption to... Good morning, Mr. Norn.
Morning, Mr. Norn.
Maybe a disruption to our proceedings, so we are proposing that we will have to adjourn at 12 to accommodate something that will be going on here, and then resume at 1:30, and then we'll have to stop by 4:30 today in order to avoid another conflict that's occurring in these offices, which may disrupt our hearing everything properly. So that's just housekeeping, but thought I'd alert you that, Mr. Cooper. Okay, Mr. Barclay.
Cooper, are you ready to go ahead with your cross-examination of Mr. Brain?
Indeed, sir, we are. I'm not sure if you heard that, but indeed, sir, we are.
Could Mr. Brain's camera on? Oh, there we go.
So,
I
sorry.
see him. Morning, Mr. Brain.
Morning, Mr. Cooper.
Good morning. Are you able to hear me, Mr. Brain?
I'm sorry, repeat that again, please.
Okay, well, I guess that was the answer. I'm speaking pretty much as loud as I'm able, and I'm as close to the microphone as I can be. Are you able to hear me clearly?
Yes, sir. You're a bit warbly, but I do hear you.
I'm rarely difficult to hear, so this is certainly noteworthy. I'll keep my voice up. If at any point, Mr. Brain, you cannot hear me, please indicate to me immediately, even if you just move your hand.
Thank you.
Okay. So, Mr. Brain, we watched a video yesterday that appears to have yourself, Mr. Norn, and some other people in the background outside. So when I'm referring to the video, I'd like you to cast your mind back to that. We may have to rewatch it, okay?
Look.
Okay. Your first contact with Mr. Norn on April 18th was when he contacted you on your phone. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is this a personal phone of yours, or is this a phone that is given to you as part of your duties at the Legislative Assembly?
It's the security officer's phone. It's kept at the front desk and carried by officers when, like on weekends and after regular working hours.
Is it fair to say, Mr. Brain, that the Legislative Assembly is not a busy place most weekends?
I'm sorry, repeat that again, please.
Is it fair, Mr. Brain, to say that the Legislative Assembly is not a busy place most weekends?
That's very correct, yeah. Most weekends, sometimes there's nobody there.
And so, based on the access control register for Saturday, April 17th, 2021, this represents a typical Saturday at the Legislative Assembly in terms of the number of people present. Is that right?
Yes, I would. Yes, I'd agree with that.
We've already heard from you, Mr. Brain, that when Mr. Norn was present at roughly 2:47 on that day, there was just yourself and one other person on the premises, correct?
Is correct.
There's no real possibility of anybody else having entered the building without it being recorded in this register, correct?
Yes, it's correct. There's Mr. Taggart and the Deputy Sergeant at Arms have keys, and they may come back in the back door which has an alarm on it, but if I'm away, I may not hear. But to the best of my knowledge, they were not near the building or in it.
You received the call from Mr. Norn, you attended to the front door, and you saw Mr. Norn in the vestibule, correct?
That's correct.
Was there anybody else in the vestibule with Mr. Norn?
No, he was by himself.
Was there anybody in proximity to Mr. Norn when you first saw him in the vestibule?
There was two children and a female on the walkway. They were the only people I had noticed.
Did you see any interaction between Mr. Norn and the three individuals that you just described that suggested that they had in any way been connected or traveled there together?
Well, absolutely none. He was by himself again in the vestibule, and the outer door was closed.
And you saw that Mr. Norn had a mask?
Yes, he did.
I think you described it as a black cloth mask.
That's what my memory has, yes.
And the mask was properly set on his face so that it covered his nose, his mouth, and his chin, correct?
I believe so.
And similarly, you were wearing a mask covering your nose, your mouth, and your chin, correct?
That's correct. I understand it's the proper procedure.
So you were following protocol as you understood it? I'm sorry, I'm not sure I heard.
That's correct.
And Mr. Norn was following protocol in terms of wearing his mask.
Yes, sir.
You opened the door, you opened the lock, you pressed the automatic door open button, and then you stepped away. Did we see that in the video, correct?
Is correct.
And you did that for purposes of social distancing, correct?
That is correct.
And Mr. Norn came through the door, and he maintained the social distance as well, correct?
Yes, sir.
And at all times while Mr. Norn was in the building, to the extent that you could see, he left his mask on and in proper place, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, now something has happened so that, Mr. Brain, your video has disappeared from the main part of the screen and I can't really see you anymore. I'm not sure which technician to turn to, but the system is not working properly right now.
We can see him.
We can see him from our vantage point quite clearly.
Okay, no, we fixed it on our end. You're now pinned. Hopefully we won't have that problem again. Nobody else entered the building while Mr. Norn was present in the building that day, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Nobody could have entered the building without your knowledge, with a couple of exceptions that you've noted, correct?
That's correct.
So at no point while Mr. Norn was in the building on April 17, 2021, was there anybody else in the building other than you, him, and one other person that was nowhere near either of you, correct?
That is correct.
Did Mr. Norn do anything to close the physical gap between you? Did he approach you? Did he attempt to shake your hand? Did he break social distancing?
No, none whatsoever.
Do you remember any communication? What were you guys talking about while Mr. Norn was there?
It was a very limited conversation. On the first floor, I asked him if he was going to his office or he wished to go somewhere else. And he indicated he wanted to go up to his office to get something.
Any other conversation between the two of you on that occasion?
Sorry, repeat that again?
Was there any other conversation between you and Mr. Norn when he visited the Legislative Assembly on April 17, 2021?
That was the first conversation I talked about was on the ground floor. The next conversation was when I was up at the door. I unlocked it, opened it, stepped back, and I asked him if he needed anything else, and did he want me to open his CA's, that's the Constitutional Assistance Office, which is right across the door from him. And he indicated no, he'd only be a few minutes.
So two very brief conversations, both of them at a social distance, correct?
Yes, sir.
And both conversations in reference to work-related matters.
Correct.
You both followed protocol the entirety of the time that you interacted on that occasion.
Yes, sir.
In fact, the one step that I missed that you indicated previously is that Mr. Norn, without being directed to do so, sanitized his hands immediately upon entering the facility.
I believe I had my back to him, but remember on the camera, yes, he walked over and sanitized. The machine is right in the walking path, so it was...
He walked directly up the stairs to his office, correct?
That's correct.
You opened the door, he immediately went into his office, correct?
That's correct.
And exited seconds later.
I'm sorry, I didn't follow what you were getting at there.
He exited his office seconds later, maybe a minute, probably less than a minute.
I wasn't there when he exited his office. I was downstairs or headed down there when he, I know it was a minute or two before he came down and exited the actual building.
How long would it have taken Mr. Norn in ordinary circumstances from the moment that you entered, that you opened the door and allowed him in, to get to his office in the Legislative Assembly?
Probably approximately a minute.
How long did he stop after entering the building before he walked up the stairs?
Less than a minute.
You made mention of the fact that you believed that he had touched his phone in his office, correct?
I'm not sure what he did in his office. When I was doing my next interior patrol, I always checked the offices to make sure there's nothing, a problem in the sense windows left open, equipment on, etc. And I did observe that the phone appeared to have been activated. I don't know why or what it was done with it.
Even a casual touching of any of the buttons on this phone, I understand, will light it up for a little while, correct?
I can't say I've done tests, but probably.
How long after Mr. Norn left did you do that patrol to which you just referred?
I can check my things, probably about 45 minutes to an hour.
And you're saying that that the light on the telephone in Mr. Norn's office was still on 45 minutes or an hour later after Mr. Norn had departed?
That's, yes.
We really don't know why that happened, do we? I'm sorry?
No, sir.
During the first brief conversation with Mr. Norn, Mr. Brain, how long did that conversation take?
20, 30 seconds.
Was Mr. Norn facing you when you were speaking with him about whether he needed access to his office or not?
Yes, I asked, and he responded. I can't remember exactly, but the impression I had is he was going to his office to pick up information.
He maintained social distance throughout that conversation, correct?
That's correct.
And in the other conversation that you had with him upstairs, close to his office, he maintained social distance, correct?
Yeah, it was closer in the sense that I was at the door and he was actually down looking in his window. That's about 5 feet, so but we were 5 feet away.
But at that point, he wasn't facing you. His face was turned away from your face, correct?
Yes, he was looking into his office, appeared to be looking for something. In fact, he made a comment that there's my glasses.
And he made that comment while looking through the window, not looking at you, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
In unlocking Mr. Norn's office door, do you have to touch the door handle?
Yes, well, in this case, I unlocked it, then opened the door and you pushed it open.
Mr. Norn entered his office. You say you weren't there when he exited. Did the office automatically lock when he left his office?
No, it doesn't. I have to lock it at some point.
And when did you do that?
That's
During your patrol?
my exterior, the next interior patrol, which was about 45 minutes later. I was checking doors and I was aware that his was unlocked, so I locked it. I always try to keep them locked if possible.
There was a fair amount of time that Mr. LaPrairie took going through your post-work activities over the next few days. I just want to touch briefly on them, Mr. Brain. You went to a couple of locations as part of your ordinary after-work activity, it sounds like. Were you following COVID protocol when you did that? Were you maintaining social distance? Were you wearing a mask when you went to the store or saw other people?
I try to, most of the time. On the weekend, you can get sloppy. Somebody's suddenly there and you run over, but I try to always wear the mask.
In the video, you saw that there were, as we touched on a little bit, 2 children and you said an adult female outside of the Legislative Assembly when Mr. Norn arrived, and they were still there when he departed, as far as you know, correct?
Correct.
Now, you said that you didn't see Mr. Norn depart. Do you mean you didn't see him leave his office, or you didn't see him leave the building?
I only saw him when he came downstairs and left the building.
And that's when you would have recorded his departure.
I'm sorry?
That's when you would have recorded the time of his departure.
That's correct. He left and I put the time down.
When Mr. Norn arrived and you saw the children, first of all, one of them was on a bicycle and one was not, correct?
I can't remember. They seem to be always having bikes, although I know sometimes they just ran around. I take it the mother had them there to get them active. And
Now, I don't know much comes of this, but why did you think that this was their mother?
I'm just making assumptions, sir.
Okay, so you saw somebody, may have been their mother, an adult female and 2 children in proximity to the doorway of the Legislative Assembly on April 17th, right?
That's correct. The mother was, for the most part, on a bench seat, and that would have been 95 feet from the front door to where she was sitting.
That's very precise. 95 feet?
That's correct.
And I'm guessing that that isn't a guess.
Sorry?
But why do you know it's 95 feet?
I assumed this question might happen. I was kind of curious, so I took a tape measure and measured it.
Well done. So 95 feet from the outside of the 2 doors, I take it?
What?
Where did you measure it from? The bench is 95 feet from precisely where?
Still not. It's very warbly, sir.
Sorry. When you measured the distance of 95 feet, where were you measuring between? The bench on one side and what? The outside door?
I measure right from the edge of the outside door down the center of the walkway to about the middle of the bench.
Did you do any measurements in reference to where you saw the children when Mr. Norn arrived?
I'm not aware where they were. I did, kind of in the back of my mind, I knew the children were out there, but it was Mr. Norn I was concentrating on and letting him in.
In your evidence earlier, though, Mr. Brain, you indicated certain distances between Mr. Norn and these children. Do you remember saying that, giving that evidence to Mr. LaPrairie, that you thought that they were within as little as 3 or 5 feet?
I don't remember saying in that context when he was coming in, because I didn't see it. If we're talking about when he left, yes, he proceeded down just off the center of and at some point the children were riding back, and they were quite active. And my memory is the little girl came down and cut across in front of Mr. Norn, and the young boy came down along his side of him.
Okay, so let's break this down. When Mr. Norn arrived, you have a recollection that there were 2 children nearby. You can't speak to how close they were to him when he arrived. Fair enough?
That's correct, yep.
You do have a better recollection of the proximity of the children to Mr. Norn on his departure, correct?
That's correct.
You were paying attention to the children in relationship to Mr. Norn's location on his departure.
Yes, when I walked out, I was there and I just observed it.
How far away were you from the vestibule when you observed the interaction between Mr. Norn and the children?
My usual procedure, and I believe I followed it in this, is unlock the door, push through, the other person comes up, I just keep going out the outside door, and I kind of swing around it and hold it open so the person comes out, passes me, but the door is between us, and they proceed, and that's kind of I was there for a few minutes or moment and watched Mr. Norn proceed out down the walkway.
Okay, do you have that precise memory, or are you relying on what you would normally do in those circumstances?
Probably more relying on what I normally do.
So you do not recall the specifics of Mr. Norn's departure from the building, correct?
I do remember it. I was there. Some of the finite details I may be rusty on.
Does Mr. Norn require you to open the door for his departure?
I believe so. I know that I'd gone down. I had the impression he was coming down right behind me. When he didn't, I went back to the signing desk. I can't remember whether I unlocked the door, although I don't think I did. And so I would have had to unlock it, and he would have had to proceed over me.
Okay, but as you say, you don't remember. You think that what you described is what happened, but you can't be certain.
That's probably correct.
From the inside, for somebody inside the building, and I'm thinking in case of fire, in the extreme case, are you saying that the vestibule is locked from the inside such that people inside cannot get out without a key?
That's correct. They could not exit from that specific door. There were other doors that have panic bars on them and you can push an exit, but not that one.
Okay. And you think it was locked at the time of Mr. Norn's departure, but you can't be certain.
That's correct.
There would normally be a video of Mr. Norn's exit, but I understand that that video has been overwritten. Is that your understanding?
I had nothing to do with that, so I don't know quite what procedures were followed or what problems they may have had.
Okay, no, that's fair enough. My understanding as well is that there's more than one camera that captures the activity going on in the entrance area of the Legislative Assembly. Were you aware of that?
There's a couple of cameras that show the Great Hall, but I'm not sure how good they show what goes on in the vestibule, and then they probably would show you at the inside door, but the outside, there is a second camera outside, but it is not operative.
How long has that camera not been operative, sir? To your knowledge.
A couple of years, I suspect.
You're familiar with the camera that produced the video that you saw early in your testimony. You know about the camera. You know that it's recording.
I was aware the camera was there. It usually, depending on where it's been set, it can cover our desk and even our office at some points. But so yes, I was very much aware it was there.
Just so that we're clear, when you talk about the Great Hall, you're talking about that giant space before the big doors into the floor of the Legislative Assembly, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, there's the Hugh Hall, and then the door leads off the south end of the exit doors.
And is it, what, 2 stories high, the Great Hall?
Yes, I believe the actual there is 22 feet. We had some architect who seemed to know and made a comment about that. I can't guarantee that, but it would appear to be about that.
The vestibule enters into the Great Hall, correct?
Yes,
And the security desk or sign-in desk that you've been referring to is also in the Great Hall, at the edge of the Great Hall, but in the Great Hall.
that's correct.
The stairs going up to the second floor are in the Great Hall.
Yes,
Until you get into the actual office area of the MLAs and others, it's not a confined area, is it? It's a very open air area.
yes, it's open. The only restrictions are there are several pillars, so if somebody goes behind them, but otherwise it's wide open.
So 22 feet high, any idea how long it is? The vestibule or the signing desk being on one end, as I recall, to the other end?
Again, I did some measurements, not totally accurate, but they're approximately 45 feet wide. And from the walking way, it's about 60 feet, probably right from our desks, closer to 75.
Roughly how far down the hallway, once you get into the more restrictive office area, how far down the hallway is Mr. Norn's office?
I believe it's 60 feet.
And that's the only part of the walk from the outside of the building to Mr. Norn's office that would be considered somewhat restricted.
The stairs are also not very wide, so you could, but yeah, from a width-wise, they're restricted area right from the stairs on up, but lengthwise, you can probably keep proper distance.
Right. So you've anticipated well. My point in all of this is it's not difficult to maintain social distance from the outdoor the outside door of the vestibule to Mr. Norn's office and back. There's lots of space there, especially when there's nobody in the building, right?
That's correct.
And even the stairs that you referred to as somewhat restricted or narrow, where the stairwell is completely wide open. You could probably go up 15 or 20 feet from the stairs, correct?
I'm not sure your statistics again. Could you run that by me?
The stairs themselves are in the Great Hall. They aren't in a stairwell. They aren't in a hallway. They're just part of the Great Hall. Until you
That's
get
correct. A grand staircase, I guess you could call it, and it's right there and proceed on up.
I'm going to jump to Mr. Norn's departure activities again. You do recall watching the children in relation to Mr. Norn. We've talked about that. But my understanding from the early summary of your evidence and what you've said thus far is the children never got close enough to Mr. Norn that you had concern, although you were beginning to become concerned at some point. Is that a fair recollection or a fair restatement?
I believe that. So the children were playing around them, but they seemed to be about, again, this 5 feet apart. The little girl had kind of come down the walkway towards him on her bike, I believe, and she speeded across. It kind of, I was a little worried she might carry on and hit him, but again, she crossed it probably in 5 feet.
Was there any attempted interaction that you saw between Mr. Norn and the children?
I'm not aware of any.
Mr. Norn, as far as you saw, walked directly away and to his vehicle. Is that right?
That's right. He proceeded down slightly off the middle. I believe at one point with the little girl, he started to deviate a little more to the left, and she went by, and then the young fellow kind of came back a foot or two. But he kept walking the whole time.
Okay, he didn't stop to talk to the children that you saw?
I'm sorry?
He didn't stop to talk to the children that you saw?
No, he kept a steady pace right out to the roadway.
To the best of your knowledge, that day at the Legislative Assembly, the only person with whom Mr. Norn engaged was you.
That's correct.
Just a couple of more statistics or measurements. My understanding is that the walkway is roughly 25 feet wide. Is that right?
That's correct. There are a few small little jet outs that maybe add a foot or two to it, but the overall walkway appears to be about 25 feet.
And it's roughly 100 feet from the outside door to the road.
Probably closer to 110, 120.
I understand as well that you've taken 4 COVID tests and all 4 have been negative.
Two sets of tests. Each set consisted of a quick test, which takes about 15 minutes to process, and the other one is a long test that I believe has to be sent to Edmonton for lab work. It takes about 3 days, 4 days.
And in each case, a negative result, correct?
All 4 tests were negative.
is there a published set of protocols by which you and other staff at the Legislative Assembly must follow with respect to COVID?
Yes, this is general instructions that have been given to us and kind of a general health procedures.
But were you given anything in writing which set out your responsibilities and obligations as a staff member at the Legislative Assembly with respect to COVID?
I would say so, but we've received a number of memos and official writings on stuff, so like off the top of my head, I can't remember seeing a specific for me saying follow the following rules. There may be, and I just don't remember it now. Or
Are you still working as a security guard at the Legislative Assembly, sir?
yes, I am.
And I think you're just a day or two past 11 years now in that role?
Sorry?
I think you said that you're a day or two now past 11 years in that role?
Yes, that's correct. Yesterday was anniversary.
Are there any or regular sessions put on by your employer in order to update you on protocols and information related to COVID?
No, usually it's been the entire staff that they've sent memos and other things to. We've had discussions about what we do. Like at one point there was all sorts of signs posted and direction guideline arrows and things like that we were talked about.
But you don't recall any specific protocol set out in writing that guided your activities in this pandemic?
Not off the top of my head, no.
When's the last staff meeting that you've had in which COVID protocols were discussed with you?
Sorry, Mr. Cooper, are you talking about the recent events, or are you talking about in the period of April of 2020 that we're talking about here?
Well, I wanted to give you an opportunity to say something. So in this instance, I'm asking now and we'll work backwards. We'll see what the Legislative Assembly is doing now to determine whether they're doing anything different than they were in April of this year.
I'm not sure what the relevance is of what the Legislative Assembly is doing now to the events in question in this inquiry.
Mr. Brain, can you answer the question, please?
I'd just like to get some clarity on the relevance here, and maybe we get some guidance from the adjudicator on this point.
I'm going to allow the question. You go ahead, Mr. Cooper.
Okay. Since COVID started, there's been a variety of things. There's obviously some cases that everybody was kind of not making up the rules, but deciding what the best procedures were. I know that there's a manual on coverage. I've looked at it. I can't say I've memorized it or can even really quote much out of it. There's been other brief discussions, that our office is not the type to have major sit-down meetings with regard to something. Usually it's the supervisor come and say, okay, this is the situation, this is what we're going to decide to do. Does everybody understand? Okay, good. And we go and do it.
Has anything changed in that regard since April of this year?
I'm sorry?
Has anything been done differently between April 1st and the present in terms of keeping you informed about COVID and COVID protocols at the workplace?
Not specifically, other than we were trying to, of course, loosen up and everything, and then all of a sudden we're going back. So the supervisor come and say, okay, today as effective. People now have to be, only so many people can come in, or things like that.
I think what you're saying, really, nothing has changed since April of this year. Is that really what you're saying?
Yeah.
Sir, I'm going to ask for just a couple of minutes to consult with Mr. Halabi before I draw to a conclusion my cross-examination. You're just on mute, sir.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, you go right ahead, Mr. Cooper. And is that enough time, 2 minutes, or?
Well, 2 minutes was a little colloquial. I'll ask for 5.
All right. You'll have 5 minutes.
This court is adjourned for a 5-minute, I'm sorry, this hearing is adjourned for a 5-minute recess. Zoomed?
Yeah.
I'm
I just
sorry.
wanted to, is Mr. Brain left yet? I just wanted to thank him for his evidence and his cooperation.
Sir, just because the clerk has indicated we weren't on officially, need I repeat my brief reference?
Yeah, I think you go right ahead, sir.
Okay, just to ensure that the record is complete, I confirmed, thank you for the indulgence in the brief adjournment, and I have no further questions for Mr. Brain. Thank you, Mr. Brain.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cooper. Mr. Brain, I just wanted to thank you on behalf of the Sole Adjudicator. We appreciate your evidence and your cooperation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
You're free.
Thank you. The next witness will be Tricia Smith, and she will be joining us by.
She's present.
She's going to be in person. Madam Anderson. And Mr. Cooper, I consulted with Mr. Barclay about the matter you raised before the commencement of the proceedings today, and he suggested that we all convene by Teams meeting, that we will send an invitation to you for 4:45 today. That'll be 15 minutes after we are anticipated to adjourn. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's agreeable. I was, yes, perfectly acceptable. I was raising up, though, with reference to the other issue involving confidential matters and ensuring that that confidentiality is respected within the testimony. So we have ongoing concerns, we've addressed them, and just wanted to alert Mr. Adjudicator to the importance of ensuring that that is maintained.
I understand that point's well taken, and we'll ensure that the confidentiality is dealt with properly.
And so we will send a message for 4:45 Teams meeting after today's proceedings. Madam Anderson, have we the witness in place?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I wonder if we could see a view of the witness. There. Okay. I wonder if, are you Tricia Smith? What's that?
Do I have to press something here? No. My name is Sue Ellen Dillabo.
Oh, okay. I'm going to have to shift gears. I was not expecting, but we can easily handle that. And what?
24.
For the convenience of counsel and for Ms. Anderson, this is tab 24, exhibit 24, and this is witness Sue Ellen Dillabo. Is that correct? And I apologize for misnaming you. Correct?
No, that's correct. Yes.
Okay. Could the witness please be sworn?
Would you like to swear, ma'am, or affirm?
I'll swear.
May you, can you state your full name, please?
Sue Ellen Marie Dillabo.
And do you swear that the evidence that you will provide today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
We didn't hear the
I
answer.
didn't hear the answer.
I do swear.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Dillabo. My name is Maurice LaPrairie, and I'll be asking you a few questions, and then Mr. Cooper will have some questions for you. But before I begin, I need to inform you that pursuant to Section 8 of the Public Inquiries Act, you do have the right to object to answer any question under Section 5 of the Canada Evidence Act. The Public Inquiries Act also provides that any witness at an inquiry shall be deemed to have objected to answer any question asked of the witness on the ground that the answer of the witness may tend to incriminate the witness or may tend to establish the liability of the witness to a civil proceeding at the instance of the Crown or any person. And no answer given by a witness at an inquiry shall be used or be admissible in evidence against the witness in any trial or other proceedings against the witness taking place after the inquiry other than a prosecution for perjury in the giving of evidence. You understand that, Ms. Dillabo?
Yes, I understand.
Okay. And you were previously interviewed by me under oath on September the 28th, 2021?
Yes, I was.
Okay. I would like to tender the transcript of that questioning, Mr. Barclay, as the next exhibit.
It'll be so entered. What exhibit number?
You're under number 22.
It'll be marked as Exhibit 22.
Now, do you know Mr. Steve Norn, MLA?
I know Mr. Steve Norn. Yes.
Yes. Okay, and what is your relationship with him?
He's my friend.
Okay, and how long has he been your friend?
About 9.5 years.
Okay. Now, I want to draw your attention to the date, Sunday, April 18th, 2021. Did Mr. Norn attend at your residence on that date?
He did.
Okay, where is your residence?
Number 23 Bork Drive in Yellowknife.
Okay. And what happened on that date?
Mr.
Norn.
Mr. Norn brought a package to give to me for my daughter.
Okay. And did he call you to arrange the drop-off?
I can't remember how he contacted me to arrange that delivery that day.
Okay. And so you greeted him when he arrived at your house on Sunday, April 18th?
Yes, I did.
Where did you meet him?
He was standing the second step down on my front steps. There's about 5 steps there. And so he knocked on my door and presumably backed up. And then I have an inside door that opens and an outside storm door that opens outside. And I pushed the storm door completely open and stood at that door.
Okay. And what happened next?
We had a conversation.
And did that conversation last about 15 minutes?
Roughly.
Okay. And were you wearing your mask at that time?
I don't know. I can't remember.
What about Mr. Norn?
I can't remember either.
Okay. Did you hand him that package?
No, he handed me the package.
Okay, I'm sorry. He delivered you a package. And what was the package?
I don't know.
Okay. How was it packaged? Was it a sack or a present or what? What
Small
did it
box.
look like?
It was a small box.
Small box. Okay. And did he describe to you what it was?
No.
But did he tell you who it was for?
Yes, he did.
Okay. And do you recall what you spoke about for about 15 minutes?
Just small talk. We're good friends for a long time.
Okay. And how close did he get to you during that conversation?
He was the second step down on my front steps, and I was all the way back with my storm door open. I don't know how far that is. It was quite far.
But he handed you a package and you took the package from him?
Yeah, he reached forward and handed me the package with outstretched arms, and I took the package with outstretched arms.
Okay. And did he have gloves on?
I can't remember.
Is there anything more you recall about that event?
No.
Okay. Did Mr. Norn subsequently call you with some information about his COVID-19 status?
Yes, he did.
And when would that have been?
He called me, I believe, on Wednesday night and apologized to me greatly and indicated that that I was COVID exposed, that he was COVID positive.
Okay. And then what did you do?
I called the on-call child protection worker, that's what I do for a living, and notified my employer that I had been exposed and would not be into work the next day.
And then did you self-isolate?
I did.
Okay, for 14 days?
I self-isolated for much longer. In fact, my oldest daughter arrived home from university during the course of that isolation, and I then isolated with her as well.
Okay. Okay, those are all the questions I have for you. Mr. Cooper may have questions.
Mr. Cooper?
I was having a wonderful conversation with myself on mute. Thank you. It's Ms. Dillabaugh. Am I saying your name correctly?
Dillabaugh.
Dillabaugh. Okay, I'll do my best.
Okay.
The date that this interaction that you just described to Mr. LaPrairie, you listed as April 18th, 2021. Are you certain that's the date? I'm not suggesting you're wrong necessarily, but are you certain it was April 18th?
Yes, I am.
And why are you so certain?
Because I work for the S.N.W.T. I'm a social worker, and I went to work on Monday.
Okay, Monday is April 19th.
Yes, on the 19th I went to work. Yeah.
What time of the day on April 18th did this interaction occur?
I can't remember.
Morning, noon, night?
It would appear to me that it was the late afternoon. I don't know exactly.
Do you remember if it was before or after supper?
It was before supper, yes.
Before or after lunch then?
After lunch, yes.
Okay, so with some certainty, sometime in the afternoon of April 18th is when you were handed the package by Mr. Norn.
Yes.
The closest that you got during that interaction was when, with outstretched arms for both of you, the package exchanged hands, correct?
Yes.
And before and after that, you were at the threshold of your house with the door open. Mr. Norn was a couple of steps down, correct?
I was actually not even in my house. I was stood on the stoop, I guess we would call it, and with my door wide open and standing right at the farthest that I could.
And was that to maintain social distancing?
It was. I'm a social worker and I have contact with a lot of people and I don't want to hurt anyone.
So to protect others, you consciously keep social distance.
Yes.
And that's true of people, or when you're with people with whom you are friendly.
Yes.
And that's true of people that in other times you would not feel an obligation to remain distant, correct?
Sorry, say that again?
Before COVID, you would not have felt an obligation to maintain the distance that you were now maintaining in April of 2021.
Yes, I normally would have warmly hugged Mr. Norn.
And you consciously did not, because were in a pandemic, correct?
Yes.
And did Mr. Norn make any approach to you that it appeared to you such that he wanted to give you a hug or get closer?
No, he did not.
And he actually backed up down the stairs after he handed you the package.
He did.
You got the call from Mr. Norn a couple of days after that interaction, correct?
Yes.
So around April 20th, I understand?
The Wednesday, yes. No, it would be Wednesday, so 21st in the evening.
Okay, so 3 days after your interaction on the 18th, you got a call from Mr. Norn saying, I tested positive.
Yes.
And did he tell, sorry, did he tell you when he got those test results?
No, he didn't say.
Did he indicate when he had taken the test, which resulted in the positive COVID test?
No, he didn't talk about that either.
Did you end up with a positive COVID test after that?
No, I did not.
Did you take the COVID test after you were contacted by Mr. Norn indicating that he had been found to be positive?
I took 4 tests.
And each of those came back negative.
Yes.
Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Thank you, Ms. Dillabo, for attending today. Appreciate it very much. I know you're a very busy social worker and appreciate your taking the time to attend here. Thank you. Madam Anderson, we would like to call Tricia Smith, and will she be Tricia Smith, who should be in person with his counsel to FAM.
Thank you. I'll look outside, sir.
What's that?
It says they're sitting.
Okay. Okay.
Yes,
Ms. Anderson, is the witness Tricia Smith present?
yes, both Ms. Smith and Mr. Pham are here.
Okay. There, I see them now. Good morning, Ms. Smith. Maurice LaPrairie here. Good morning, Mr. Pham. Welcome. We are going to now ask that Ms. Smith be sworn or affirmed.
Would you like to swear or affirm, ma'am?
I swear.
Can you say your full name, please?
Tricia Lee Smith?
Do you swear, Ms. Smith, that the evidence that you'll provide today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yeah.
Okay, Ms. Smith, as I did when you were previously questioned, I have to give you this warning. I'd like to begin by informing you that pursuant to Section 8 of the Public Inquiries Act, you do have the right to object to any to answer any question under Section 5 of the Canada Evidence Act. The Public Inquiries Act also provides that any witness at an inquiry shall be deemed to have objected to answer any question asked of the witness on the ground that the answer of the witness may tend to incriminate the witness or may tend to establish the liability of the witness to a civil proceeding at the instance of the Crown or any person. And no answer given by a witness at an inquiry shall be used or be admissible in evidence against the witness in any trial or other proceedings against the witness taking place after the inquiry other than a prosecution for perjury in the giving of evidence. You understand that warning?
I do.
Ms. Smith? Okay. Now, you were previously questioned by me on 2 occasions, questioned by me under oath on 2 occasions, correct? Your answer?
Correct.
The first one was on August the 31st, 2021. And you should see your transcript there. If it's on under tab 25 of the exhibit book. Is that in front of the witness, Ms. Anderson? If not, I'd ask to be put in front of the witness. You have your transcript there of the interview under oath that I conducted of you on August 31st, 2021?
Yes, I have it.
Okay. I'd like that marked as an exhibit.
That'll be marked as Exhibit 23.
I subsequently examined you on October the 1st, 2021, and I asked that that transcription of the testimony under oath, tab 26 of our exhibit book, be put before the witness. You have now the transcription of your sworn testimony of October 1st, 2021?
I have it.
Okay, I had asked that be entered, Mr. Barclay.
That'll be marked as Exhibit 24.
How long, you know Mr. Norn, Mr. Steve Norn, correct?
Correct.
How long have you known him?
For a few years, several years. Not entirely sure the date.
Okay. And for a period of time, were you living with him?
Yes, for a year.
For how long?
1 year.
Okay. And what year were you living with him? What month to what month were you living with him?
May 2020 to May 2021.
And did you live together in a residence in Yellowknife?
We did.
What was the address of that residence?
904 Williams Ave.
Okay. And was anyone else living at that residence during that period of time, May 2020 to May 2021?
My daughter was.
Okay. And your daughter's name is?
Chaylee.
Spelled C-H-A-Y-L-E-E?
Correct.
Did Did you travel with Mr. Norn to Grand Prairie in April of 2021?
I did.
Did you file a self-isolation plan for the trip to Grand Prairie?
I did.
After filing the self-isolation plan, did you receive a letter from the government of the Northwest Territories with respect to the approval of your plan?
I did.
And if you would look to the transcript of August 31st, you'll see that we marked that document as Exhibit 2, I believe. Pardon? 1. Yes. No, it's Exhibit 2. Just that. Oh, Exhibit 1. Exhibit 1 to your questioning on August 31st, 2021.
I have that.
Okay. And is this a letter addressed to you dated April the 2nd, 2021 from the government of the Northwest Territories re your notice of approval to self-isolate in a designated community? Is that correct? Have I described that correctly?
Yes,
Let me repeat the question. Is this a letter that you received from the government of the Northwest Territories regarding your self-isolation plan on April the 2nd, 2021?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And you'll see it was marked as Exhibit 1 during your questioning. I asked it to be marked now as an exhibit in these proceedings.
Exhibit 25?
Exhibit 25.
25.
Thank you, Mr. Barclay. So you testified that you filed a self-isolation plan to go to Grand Prairie, correct?
Correct.
And you received this letter in response to filing that self-isolation plan, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the letter reads, Dear Tricia Smith, and it says it's a letter by email. Did you receive this by email?
I did.
And it refers to SIP, SIP number 41199. Did you understand that that was your self-isolation plan number?
Yes.
And it reads, Dear Tricia Smith, notice of approval to self-isolate in a designated community. Self-isolation plan. Thank you for submitting a self-isolation plan to protect N.W.T. Your SIP has been approved pursuant to paragraph 2 of the public health order respecting travel restrictions and self-isolation protocol. Upon arrival in the Northwest Territories, N.W.T., you are required to complete 14 days of mandatory self-isolation in Yellowknife, starting April 4th, 2021, up to and including April 18th, 2021. End of quote. Did you understand that when you read it at the time?
I did.
Okay. And then it goes on to say, it is your responsibility to ensure you understand and abide by all conditions set out in your SIP and in the current public health orders. Please note any changes to your SIP must be resubmitted and reapproved by Protect N.W.T. Appendix A provides a reference summary of compliance conditions and self-isolation protocols for your convenience. You read that at the time, correct?
Correct.
And it says, quote, you have identified April 4th, 2021 as your date of arrival, bracket DOA. If your DOA changes, please email protectnwt@government.nwt.ca with the new date, and you will be provided with an updated mandatory self-isolation period. End of quote. When did you arrive back from Grand Prairie?
April 4th.
Okay, so you didn't have to change the arrival date. That was when you were expecting to come back anyways.
Correct.
Now, when did you arrive back from Grand Prairie with Mr. Norn?
Correct.
And did you and Mr. Norn self-isolate upon return?
We did.
What time of the day did you return on April 4th?
During the evening.
Did you have? Can you be any more precise as to the time?
No, I don't know the time.
Was it closer to midnight or closer to 6 o'clock?
Supper time.
Okay. You recall what you did when you got back to your residence?
No, I don't.
Okay. And did you and Mr. Norn then self-isolate starting April the 4th?
Correct.
Okay. And what about your daughter, Shaylee? Was she there when you returned?
No.
Okay. When did she return during that self-isolation period?
The second week.
Okay. So were you still in self-isolation when she returned to the house?
Correct.
I'm sorry, let me try that again. Do you know what date she returned to the house?
No, I don't.
Were you still in self-isolation when she returned?
Yes.
Okay, so it was prior to April 18th, correct?
Correct.
Okay. We'll come back to that in a minute. Now, I'd like you to turn your mind back to 4 days after you began your self-isolation to April the 8th. Were you present when Natasha Schwint and Mr. Norn's daughter, Sine Norn, stopped at your house on April the 8th in their car returning from the airport?
No, I don't. No, I don't recall that.
Okay. Okay. Now, did something occur so in terms of your self-isolation, what did you understand you were permitted to do or not permitted to do during that period of self-isolation?
Just isolate. We could go for drives.
The two of you together?
Correct.
Okay. Did you understand you could do anything else outside the house?
No, we weren't allowed to go to any public place or anything like that.
Okay. And I turn your attention to around midnight on April the 15th, 2021. Did anything occur then with respect to Mr. Norn leaving the residence?
Yes.
Can you tell us what that was?
I noticed that he wasn't in the residence around 12 o'clock a.m.
Okay. And where were you when you noticed that?
in our room.
in your bedroom that you shared with Mr. Norn?
Correct.
Okay, and how did you notice that he wasn't in the residence?
I went downstairs and I didn't see him.
Okay. Did you see anything that belonged to him?
His cell phone.
Okay. So this is around midnight. Did you see him again later?
Yes, he returned
morning?
back. Sorry.
Okay. So he came back to the residence, and what happened then?
He was looking for his phone.
Okay, and did he retrieve it to your knowledge?
He did.
Okay. And did he tell you where he'd been?
No?
Okay. Did you ask him where he'd been?
I tried, but he didn't say anything. He was just looking for his phone.
So you asked him. Okay, so you asked him where he'd been, and he didn't answer?
Correct.
Did you ask him more than once?
I don't recall.
Okay. And when he came back and retrieved his phone, how long did he stay? Or did he leave there after?
What was that?
After he came back and got his phone, did he stay with you in the residence?
No.
Where did he go?
He left.
Okay. And did you follow him?
I did.
Okay. Did you follow him on foot or by car?
On foot.
Okay. Can you describe where you followed him to?
He was going into the direction of Natasha. Residence, I guess.
Was he on foot?
He was.
Okay. And when you say he was going to the direction of Natasha, what do you mean by that?
He was walking towards her residence.
And is that Natasha Schwint
Correct.
you're speaking about?
Yes.
And who is Natasha Schwint to Mr. Norn, to your knowledge?
His ex-common law.
And where does she live in relation to your house at that night?
She lives at 12 Willowwood Court.
How far is that away from your residence?
A block away.
So you followed Mr. Norn on foot. Were you talking to him?
I was. Well, I tried to.
Saying to him?
I
Okay,
just
what
asked him to come
were you
back
saying
home. Sorry to interrupt.
I'm sorry. And did you ask him more than once?
I did.
Okay. And why were you asking him that?
Because it was late. And we're isolating.
Okay. And did you see him go to Miss Schwint's house that night?
No, I did not. I just seen him going up to that direction.
Okay. How close did you see him get to that house?
By the time I got up the hill there, I didn't see him.
Okay. Did he ever respond to you asking him not to leave that night?
I don't recall.
Okay. But how many times did you ask him to return to the house?
It was maybe once or twice I asked him. He was ahead of me, so.
Now, when you returned to the house, who was there?
The RCMP and my daughter.
Okay. Why were the RCMP at your house?
Because my daughter called the RCMP.
Why did your daughter call the RCMP, to your knowledge?
I told her to.
Why did you tell her to call the RCMP?
Because when he was coming upstairs, he was being angry, so I just reacted to and told her to call the RCMP.
You called him because he was being angry, is that correct?
He was just swearing, and I just didn't want to deal with it, so I told her to call the RCMP.
Okay. And what did you expect the RCMP to do?
I don't know. It was just happened so fast that I just told her to call.
Okay. And so when you arrived, the RCMP was at your residence, you said?
Correct?
Okay. And what did you tell the RCMP?
I just said that he was being annoying and whatnot, and he just asked if we're okay, and that's about it, I guess.
Did you tell the RCMP that you were self-isolating?
No, I told them that we were self-isolating.
By we, you meant you and Mr. Norn
Correct.
and Shaylee. Let me repeat that. So you told the RCMP that you were self-isolating. You and Mr. Norn and Shaylee were self-isolating?
I did, yes.
So Shaylee had returned to the house by that date, April 15th, right?
Correct.
Now, to your knowledge, who else lives with Natasha Schwint on that date in April of 2021?
Their daughter, Sina?
Dina Norn?
Correct.
How old is she, or was she at the time?
9?
Now, after you got back to the residence, did you try to contact Mr. Norn by any means?
I probably did.
Did you try phoning and texting him?
I believe so.
Okay. Did you get any response from him?
No.
So what did you do then after you got back, talked to the RCMP, phoned and texted him? What did you do after that?
I went to bed.
Okay. You know what time you would have went to bed?
I don't recall.
The events you've been describing were all after midnight that night, correct?
It would have to be like 1 or 2. I don't recall the exact time.
That's 1 and 2 in the morning, correct?
Correct.
When did you next see Mr. Norn?
The next morning,
At approximately what time?
I'm not too sure. It was in the morning sometime.
Okay. And where was he when you first saw him that morning?
He was on the couch downstairs.
Was he awake or sleeping?
Asleep, I believe. I don't recall if he was awake or not.
Did you ask Mr. Norn about the night before where he went?
Did.
And what did he reply?
He went for a walk.
Okay, did he give you any more information?
No.
Did he tell you that he went to Natasha Schwint's house?
No.
Okay. Now, in your earlier testimony given on the dates that I've indicated, do you recall Mr. Norn leaving the house on any other occasion?
I do. He did go for a drive.
Okay. And did he go for a drive by himself?
He did.
Okay. Do you have any understanding of where he went on that drive?
No.
Now, did you ever become aware that Mr. Norn had went to the legislature on April the 17th, 2021?
I was aware.
How did you become aware?
It was on social media.
Okay. Did you see it on social media?
I did, yes.
Okay. And so did you speak to him about that?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And why did you speak to him about it?
I asked if he went there.
Okay. And were you, that was April 17th was during your self-isolation period. Yours and Mr. Norn, correct?
Correct?
Your answer is yes? I'm sorry, I didn't hear your answer.
Yes.
Okay. Were you angry with Mr. Norn for going to the legislature on that date?
I was.
Okay, can you tell us what you said to him?
I don't recall what I said. That was a long time ago.
Okay. And when did you discover that he had actually gone to the legislature? Only when he admitted it to you?
When I asked him,
Yeah. What would that would have been after April the 18th, correct?
correct.
Okay. Now, on April the 18th, were you aware that Mr. Norn visited the Yellowknife Racquet Club?
Yes, I was aware.
Okay, how did you become aware?
Because he told me he was going there.
Okay. Did you express any concerns with him going there?
No.
Why not?
Because we're finished isolation.
You know what time of the day he would have went to the Yellowknife Racquet Club?
It would have to be in the afternoon sometime.
Do you know whether he went anywhere else on April 18th?
No, I don't.
Do you know that he dropped off a package at Sue Ellen Dillebo's house on April 18th, right? Yeah, on April 18th.
He probably told me, but I don't know who that is.
Oh, you don't know who Sue Ellen Dillebo is?
No.
Okay. Now, I'd like you to look at Exhibit 3 to your transcript. Exhibit 3 to your transcript of August 31st. I think it's the first. Let me know when you've got it. It's Exhibit 3 to your transcript of August 31st, 2021. Yeah, I got it. Have you got that in front of you, Ms. Smith?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Is this an email that you received from the Northwest Territories Smart Sheet program at 2:04 a.m. on April the 18th, 2021?
Correct?
Okay. And during your period of isolation, would you have been reporting to the Northwest Territories authorities on days 2, 4, 2, 4, 6, and 10?
Correct.
Okay. And how did you make that report? Is it by online?
Yes.
Okay. And you received this email, as you said, and I'll just read it. It says, "Hello, Tricia. According to your date of arrival, this is day 14 since entering the N.W.T. You must confirm whether or not you are experiencing any symptoms." And end of quote. You weren't experiencing any symptoms, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Your date of arrival 4/4/21 has, if your date of arrival 4/4/21 has changed, you must contact Protect N.W.T, etc. End of quote. But your date of arrival was April the 4th, correct?
Correct.
And then it says, please click the following link to complete your symptom check. If you are unable to click the link, copy and paste it into your browser. And so did you click that link and fill out your symptom check?
I did.
Okay. And you reported no symptoms, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, did you also receive a phone call that day from Statistics Canada with respect to your isolation?
Yes, I did.
Okay. What time of day did you get that phone call? On April 18th.
Not entirely sure what time. It would have to be morning sometime.
Okay, and can you tell us to the best of your ability what was said during that call?
I don't really recall. It was a quick call, so it was just like, we received your email and then this is your last day of isolation. Something like that. Can't recall entirely.
Okay. And after you received that telephone call, what did you do in relation to your self-isolation?
I don't recall what I did.
Okay. Your own activities on April 18th, did you go outside the home on April 18th?
I probably went to the grocery store that evening.
Anything else outside the home on April 18th?
I don't recall, no. I don't believe I did anything.
What time did you believe that your isolation ended on April 18th, or did you believe it ended that day?
Yes, I did believe it was ended that day.
How did you come to that belief?
Because of the call.
Okay. What was it about the call that made you believe that your isolation was over?
That was the last call that we were completed, our isolation.
Okay, well, I would like you to think very carefully. Did the person who called you say anything about your isolation being ended after the call was finished?
I believe they said something like, our isolation is complete.
Right. But we looked at the letter earlier in your testimony. It says your isolation's from April the 4th to April the 18th, including April 18th. You recall looking at that with me, right?
I do.
Did anyone say to you that your isolation ended at a particular time on April the 18th?
No,
When did you believe it was over?
when we got the call.
Okay. So what is it about the call that made you believe it was over?
That was the last call that we're receiving.
Okay. That was just the last time you expected to hear from anybody on a symptom check, correct?
Correct.
But you yourself only went out later that evening to go grocery shopping, correct?
Correct.
You didn't go anywhere in the afternoon?
Probably went for a drive. I don't really recall.
Okay. Well, did you isolate in the afternoon of April 18th?
No,
Okay.
we were done.
So, okay. And your best memory of when that phone call came in was in the morning of April 18th?
Correct.
Don't let me put words in your mouth. You tell me.
Yes, it was in the morning sometime. I don't know the time.
Okay. Okay. Just let me check my notes. Oh, yes. Would you look at Exhibit 4 to your transcription of evidence of August 31st? That's Exhibit 4.
I have it.
This is a media statement by Steve Norn. I showed you at your last questioning, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And in Mr. Norn's media statement, he says, quote, on the evening of Monday, April 19th, 2021, the Chief Public Health Officer identified that wastewater testing had identified the presence of COVID-19 virus in the Yellowknife and asked that any person who was self-isolating or self-monitoring from April 14th to the 17th, 2021 get tested. As I was self-isolating in those days, I went and had a COVID-19 test on Tuesday, April 20th, 2021. You see that reference?
I do.
Okay. And do you know that Mr. Norn was tested for COVID-19? Did he tell you his results?
He did.
Okay. Were you similarly tested?
I was the same day.
Okay. And what were your results?
Negative.
Okay. What about your daughter, Shaylee?
She was positive on the 21st. Or the 22nd, I can't remember which day. The 22nd.
And so did you have to self-isolate with her after that?
Yes.
Starting on April 21st for 14 days?
Correct.
I have no further questions, Mr. Barclay.
Mr. Cooper, cross-examination?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ms. Smith. I'm not going to go in any particular order, and I don't think I have a lot of questions for you, but I do want to talk about that series of events, first of all, on April 14 and night of April 14 and 15. I understand that you recall Mr. Norn leaving the house the night of the 14th, is that right?
The 15th, it would be 12 a.m., around there.
Okay, so the night of the 14th, the morning of the 15th, or the...
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. I understand that there had been an argument between you and Mr. Norn that night. Is that right?
Correct?
Quite a heated argument, in fact.
I don't recall. It was heated.
And then the reason that he left was as a direct result of that argument, as far as you could determine, correct?
What was that, sorry?
The reason he left that night was the argument, as far as you could determine.
I believe so.
And it wasn't uncommon, if you guys had an argument, that he would leave to cool down, correct?
Correct.
And you followed him, and the argument continued at a distance, I understand, outside?
He didn't speak to me.
Did you speak with him as you were following him?
Yes.
You were yelling at him.
Nope.
You were talking in a calm voice?
My voice was raised, but I wasn't yelling at him.
Okay. You were still angry.
Yes.
And you saw him going in the direction of Natasha's house, but you didn't see him enter Natasha's house, correct?
Correct.
You have no idea what he did after that until you saw him the next morning when he was lying on the couch, correct?
Correct.
I take it you didn't hear him come back that early morning?
No, I was upstairs.
You didn't, so you have no idea what time he came through the door?
No, I don't.
You don't have a security system or a camera system that would allow you to determine when he came back into the house? Sorry?
No, I don't.
You didn't see him interact with anybody that night as you were following him in the direction of Natasha's house? Did you?
No, I didn't see anybody.
You entered the Northwest Territories in a vehicle with Mr. Norn on April 14th. I think you said that you thought you arrived around supper time to Yellowknife.
April 14th.
Sorry, 18th. 4th. I'm getting the dates mixed up.
Yes, correct.
So let me rephrase that. You entered the Northwest Territories on April 4th in the same vehicle as Mr. Norn, correct?
Correct.
It's been a long time since I did this drive, but I'm guessing it's 5 or 6 hours to get from the border to Yellowknife.
Roughly, yes.
Do you remember when you actually entered the Northwest Territories, the time?
It would have to be in the afternoon.
Early afternoon of April 4th?
Correct.
Okay, probably closer to noon than to supper time if you arrived in Yellowknife at supper.
Yes, it was in the afternoon or sometime. I don't know what exact time.
Okay. You then received an email, which is an exhibit to these proceedings. The time of the email was April 18th, 2021 at 2:04 a.m. You remember receiving that email?
Which email, sorry?
The email from CSIS via smart sheet. It's exhibit 3 to your...
Oh, yes, that's dated August 30th.
No, April 18th.
Oh, sorry, okay, yes.
Okay, just
Okay,
so that
sorry.
we're
I was
clear.
looking at the clock.
That's right.
Yes, the 18th.
Because you sent the email to Mr. LaPrairie's associate, Shauna Sparrow, on August 30th, but you received it on April 18, 2021 at 2:04, correct?
Correct.
2:04 a.m.
Yes?
Okay, I don't know if you were up when it came in, but when did you first see the email, roughly?
When I woke up.
What time would
Yes.
that have been, roughly?
I don't know.
How long before you got the call from, I think it's StatsCan, or the call that released you, in your view, from isolation?
In the morning sometime.
So the phone call and the email were, you saw and received the call, you saw the email and received the call pretty close together, right?
Correct.
Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Sorry, we're on mute there. There are no more questions for you, and I thank you, Ms. Smith, and I thank your counsel, Mr. Pham, for attending today and being available. I know we've kept you waiting, and I'm sorry about that.
Do I keep these here? Just leave these here?
Yes,
Okay.
please. Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, I know that we have one more witness that I'm guessing.
Yes.
I know I need a short break, and I suspect that our court reporter and our interpreters probably would appreciate one after almost 2 straight hours of.
Okay.
Let's take a 15-minute break.
Well, we have to be out, we have to adjourn at 12.
Yeah,
so-
it might be, we've only got one witness left. It may be wise to adjourn until 1:30, Mr. Cooper, at which time we could start with Stephanie Gilbert.
Yeah,
No, we have another witness.
Okay, there's another witness?
Yeah, we have another witness, as Mr. Cooper knows, which would be Natasha Schwint. And then the other witness that we're anticipating today would be Stephanie Gilbert. So would it be in order then to adjourn till 1:30, Mr. Barclay?
Yeah, I don't have any problem with that because I gather we can get through both those witnesses well before supper time.
Okay.
Do you have a problem with that, Mr. Cooper?
no, none whatsoever. We might then be able to adjust our Teams meeting on the other matter to an earlier time.
Yeah, it may well be that we would get to the other matter that we have to deal with much earlier than we thought.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so we're adjourned till 1:30, Madam Anderson.
Thank you. This inquiry is now adjourned until 1:30.